Hello there, ladies and gents. Welcome back to the Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben. Today I'm continuing to review the Ewoks show. I want to get it out of the way before Ahsoka's show comes out next month. We are on Season 2, Episode 13, this season, Scepter. So far, Season 2 has been okay. It's somewhat of a bumpy road. My main issue with it was the shorter episodes, obviously because of the budget constraints, and they were kind of like winding down on the show. Apparently it wasn't super popular. But with this particular episode, we're full on track. We're given a full episode, which is like 20 plus minutes, which I was very happy for. I'm always appreciative because they generally get to spend more time in the story, flesh out the characters properly, even though some of the shorter episodes have been pretty good. Anyway, let's dive right into it. I'll basically express my overall impression and give the final score at the end, but let's get the story going there. We open up with Nisa and Latara. They're enjoying their day at the beach, right? They're at the riverbank. They're having a good time. The girls are relaxing. Shortly after, Wicked and Teebo are joining them. They're sort of like spoiling the fun. They're splashing the girls. But then they decide at the end, you know what? Let's dry all together. And Teebo, being the magician's apprentice, he casts his spell. But it doesn't quite go as planned. In the beginning, we get a little bit of a breeze of a wind and everybody dries out. That's good. But then suddenly, things are beginning to freeze. Just snow covers the entire Endor. At this point, we're thinking it's just the forest. And all of our heroes are immediately alarmed. Hold on a second, what's going on? This is not supposed to be this way. And Teebo immediately blames himself, because we had instances before where he tries to cast a spell, he tries to impress his friends and help them, and it doesn't go according to plan because he's still an apprentice. He doesn't master this force yet. From the visual standpoint, right away, I really started enjoying this episode because not only we're given the plot point right from the beginning, we understand what the premise is. Something goes terribly awry. We don't quite know if it's Teebo's actual doing or not. It's kept in question there, but immediately there is a conflict set up, this great ordeal that they need to overcome. They need to restore the weather to Endor Forest. Like, oh my God, how are they going to accomplish that? And we're shown something very different and very interesting. I don't remember watching Endor being completely covered in snow before, if memory serves, and was actually a very interesting visual treat. And immediately our young friends are trying to get some helps, right, from the adults. They're like, hey, we gotta go to Master Logray. He's gonna help us solve it. But he's nowhere to be found. And once again, I really enjoyed this approach where the young heroes have to rely on one another. It's not going to be one of these problems that adults are going to supervise and come over and just to teach them a lesson and solve all the problems for them. I really like that. Now the picture shifts. We're taken somewhere else and we greet our villains of this particular episode. Evil Orda. She charms her pawn, the Snow King, and we learn that they're the ones responsible because they stole the season Scepter, which later episodes we're going to reveal of its full power is going to be explained, and we understand what actually these two villains have done. And not only they stole the Scepter, now they also desire the Ewoks Sunstar, as Order is trying to say, how am I going to use this Sunstar? I'm going to wear it as a pendant, or am I going to destroy the Ewoks forest? She's completely up to no good. And I really enjoyed her visual style and visual design. And also with the Snow King, which kind of like harkens back to the classical Snow Queen fairy tale. And it's interesting because there's an important lesson for Teebo where from his end of the story, he doesn't fully realize what happens there, right? Because it's all to be revealed to him later on, but he is ashamed of his actions because he understands, even as a child, that he needs to respect this greater power. And I sort of felt compassionate for him and his ignorance, that he wasn't aware that it's not his doing. And you kind of feel for this little Ewok, and you want him to learn that, hey, look, this particular example, it's not your fault what happened. It's actually some bad guys behind it. So I was really rooting for him, and I really wanted him to find out the truth very quickly. So it's a testament how the episode writers were approaching it very well. They were establishing a conflict and it was setting up the stakes from the early on, and I really appreciated that. Now, we mentioned that Master Logray is nowhere to be found, and the Ewoks travel back to the village, and they're contacted by the Leaf Queen, right? And she tells the Ewok what's going on there, that, you know, perhaps she's the one who's going to help them. And as they exit the hut, I think Latara says the one, oh, gee, how are we going to travel to the Leaf Queen? Is it going to be some magical leaf just appearing out of nowhere? Lo and behold, the Leaf Queen also commands considerable power, and this flying leaf comes over and all the Ewoks travel on board of it. I was immediately thinking of the Arabian Nights and of course of the famous Aladdin and the Magic Carpet Tale here. I always put myself, or try to, in the shoes of a young audience, young viewers, for who this show is intended. I'm like, oh my god, this has got to be super fun, very exciting. The Ewoks are flying to their next destination, to this mysterious Leaf Queen who's potentially going to help them out and solve this problem. And as I mentioned earlier also, I really appreciate the facts how the adults are crafting the story. They're showing that Ewoks have to rely on one another here, and on their own strength, and support each other throughout their adventure. And there's not going to be an easy solution or magic stick provided for them to fix all of their mistakes. And they see the effects of Teebo's misdoing as they fly over. We even see a couple of villages and all the familiar creatures that we see throughout the show. For example, the Mims village is completely covered in snow, and they're kind of like just shivering there. And I really love, once again, they're reiterating the point that Teebo, he feels miserable. He says it out loud several times in the show, and he knows that he's responsible for his action, and he's being, you know, trying to own up to his own mistakes, and we're going to see it later on in the episode. So once again, I really like it. Very likable and relatable moment there. Once again, Snow King and Order, they're kind of like observing Ewoks traveling, and they send their henchmen, these ice heads, to intercept the Ewoks. And guys, I really, really like the ice heads creatures. Once again, it's a kids show. It's meant to be bizarre. And I think the cool factor, the excitement with kids comes when you take something regular and literally turn it upside down, make it different somehow, just switch the flip, build something that kids haven't seen before. And once again, these ice heads, they're kind of like walking, but at the same time, when they're off to do their duty, they jump on their heads and they just start sliding along the floor and just go through their mission. I was like, this is so ridiculous. It's so bizarre, and it's so fun for the younger audience. The next scene takes us over a very interesting location. Like, we see beautiful sweeping mountains and canyons, and this is where our main first action scene takes place, because they're fighting off some of these ice head henchmen, and this strange creature comes out of nowhere. It looks menacing, but it looks like it's after those up to no good ice heads and not necessarily Ewoks, and then it just chases them off. That was kind of interesting. And then I really liked, once again, that the bad guys are using the environment around them. So the writers are exploiting the narrative to its fullest potential. So the snow is a bad thing for the forest. We realize when the Ewoks are flying to their mission to meet the Leaf Queen that it's not just Endor moon forest, it's the entire moon. So the devastation is quite thorough. It's like, and they had to solve a bigger problem than they first thought. And once again, they basically send off this avalanche trying to take care of the Ewoks. I'm like, that's clever, that's nice. They're using snow as a weapon. That's kind of interesting. And the stakes are raised once again when Princess Nisa, the young Ewok, she's actually taken prisoner. And like, oh man, they're really building the tension throughout the episode. It's really effective up to this point. And once again, I really like that the writers are making all the points clear, and they're covering all their bases as far as telling the story. Because later on, we learn that Master Logray is nowhere to be found. So they could have left it just like that and just continued the episode, but we actually reference back to it, and we discover why he wasn't available, why the village was abandoned, because it got extremely cold. But Master Logray was trying to help their animals. He was being compassionate and kind, like all the Ewoks are. And this is the reason that you love them, and the reason that you enjoy them. And this is why the adult who could potentially help our young heroes, he wasn't available, because he was taking care of something else. I really like that. Now, Teebo, Wicket, and Latara arrive at the Sun King's palace. Visually, I like it. It doesn't look like your typical medieval castle because we see the Ewok show generally incorporate that 80s cartoons, almost like gummy bears type of familiar medieval architecture or motifs. But here, the King's Palace looks quite different. It's almost like this dome-shaped thing, which is quite different. I like it. And we eventually meet the Flower and Leaf Queens. We meet their brother, the Sun King. And we understand when the plot is revealed to us what actually happened, that the other guy, the Ice King, is actually their brother. And it's the evil Order who actually charmed him, and she froze his heart and she made him her pawn. And we realize at this specific point that Teebo is innocent. And he's so happy. He's like celebrating. He's like, I'm innocent. I didn't do this stuff, which is kind of like a load off his shoulders. And there's a small moment of relief and celebration for the Ewoks. I'm like, okay, man, finally, okay, we can move on with the adventure here. And I'm so happy when Teebo realizes what really transpired here. And young heroes learn that the only possible way to undo the damage and to restore Endor Moon is to get the scepter back because it controls the weather on the planet. For some odd reason, as the episode was going, obviously it's a kid's show, but I was kind of figuring out in my own mind as a huge expanded universe fan, potentially it's kind of possible because what Ewoks describe as magic is the Force, and maybe this particular tool, which they think is a magical scepter, could have been some sort of a technology for terraforming and weather manipulation that the Ewoks get a handle on, and they consider it this kind of like magical power. I was thinking, possibly, maybe they kind of like spin it and make it more adult-oriented and explain it away. That could have been an interesting connection of crossing the magic, how the more primitive culture Ewoks consider it, versus technology that maybe the Imperials or the New Alliance has developed. So that was kind of cool comparison there. Next, what happens is our young heroes realize they need to enter the palace. And they make a really funny and really cute disguise. They all like cover them in snow. I think it's Wicked who tells them, look, I got a plan. You guys follow suit. And he starts basically putting snow all over him. And they start looking like these ice heads. That's how they're able to enter the Snow King's palace. And what happens next is Nyssa is frozen. Once again, it's like, oh my God, Nyssa experiences her Han Solo carbonite moments. Like, oh man, once again, the stakes are elevated even higher. Maybe they got to rush and save her quickly because who knows, if she's in this state for a prolonged period of time, maybe she will stay like a pop icicle and you'll never save her. Who knows? Once again, it's a kid's show. And they basically changed their cover. And it was the only moment where I was scratching my head because they turned into these ice-on-a-stick peddlers. They arrived to distract the villains so they could actually snatch the scepter. And the Order, the evil lady, she says, hold on a second. Haven't I seen you somewhere before? I'm like, gee, have you not seen them before? They look exactly like they did with our disguise, like regular Ewoks. We're like, oh, I don't know about this. I'm scratching my head. But again, it's a small nitpick. It's a kid's show. Like, who cares? They just basically went to ice-on-a-stick paddlers, right? And this is where the main battle ensues. All of our heroes, they jump around. They fight off the bad guys. They fight off the henchmen. And at the most crucial moment, it's Teebo and Wicked. They're holding the scepter down together because Teebo on his own is unable to wield its power. So it's two friends. They have to rely on each other. And all the girls are also like playing their part in this action sequence. And it's all the heroes coming together to defeat the evil. I really, really enjoy this. Here is your basic story where every young cast member has their part to play in the story. They all have merit. They all come through and help each other out. And I really like that. It's never just Wicked, like, I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to win the day for the good guys. No, it's all of them working together. And this time around, adults are not there to help them out. They have to rely on working together. Of course, we're celebrating the victory. At the end, the Endor is restored to its sunny weather. And the Chief Chirpa and Master Logray arrive at the last moment, and this is where moment of happiness happens for all of them. They're happy, you know, the force is restored. But Latara, being the cynical young lady that she is like, I don't see anybody helping me out here. What's going on? I'm still kind of trapped. And Wicket makes a funny joke at the end, like, hey, at least our adults, Master Chirper, Chief Chirper, he has this young lady to save. And they all laugh, and they all make like a light joke of it at the end. So all in all, I would say this is probably my favorite episode of season 2. As much as I give credit to shorter episodes being concise, but also being on point and constructing the story effectively, it's in almost all of the cases, it's never enough time. I really appreciate these full-time episodes, which we get very few of in this season, unfortunately, but we did get a couple of modern Ewok comic books, so maybe our hopes and praise will be answered, and they will kind of look into this side of Star Wars expanded universe and say, you know what, let's restore the Ewoks show and make a continuation of it, like a season 3 or something. Let's start from scratch, completely rebooted. So at the end, this episode had some very brilliant, beautiful scenery, excellent visuals, you know, the snow effects there, that when the avalanche hits, it was really well done. When they're inside the castle, the character design on the villains was really nice. All the leaf, queen and the flower queen and their siblings, they're all very interesting look-wise. The ice heads are very funny and curious creatures. I really like when they flip them upside down. That was interesting and an exciting moment for kids. But what I appreciated the most is that the story had a very specific vision of what it wanted to tell. That you have to be aware of great power that you can potentially wield, and you have to be responsible for it. And Teebo was not shying away from his responsibility. He said, I am responsible. I feel so miserable. How do we fix this stuff? It is so relatable. It's so interesting to watch. And at the end, the most desperate moment, all of the young heroes are working together to defeat the evil. Once again, it's a beautiful, teachable moment for kids. And I think it's a universal message that anybody can understand anywhere in the world. You have to respect your friends, you have to respect great power, and you have to collaborate. You have to work together. So all in all, this episode gets a 4 out of 4 stars from me, no questions asked. It was great all around. It had a great story, it had a fun action sequence, and very whimsical new characters that we have not seen before. Anyway, guys, let me know, what did you think of this particular episode? If you enjoy my reviews of the Ewoks show, please like this video, comment anywhere in the video below, and I'll check you guys next time. Take care, everyone.